Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Brian Eskow Show. I have been waiting a few weeks to say that. I finally rebranded. I got it done. No more searching for political identity, although I haven't completely abandoned that process. But no, I am now the host of the Brian Eskow Show, and I have been waiting to do a proper solo episode since that. But I've had a couple great guests, and that's just the way it's been. So, been guest centric the last couple weeks, and I was actually supposed to be interviewing someone right now, a wonderful guest who I've had on once before, and I'm sure it was just a misunderstanding. So, absolutely no problem and no hard feelings. I'm sure we'll reconnect. Was looking forward to the conversation for sure, but I'm gonna audible and do the solo episode, a modified version. A quick version. I have so much more to say, I'll be. Stay tuned. I have a lot more notes. For example, I want to get to a book review of, here it is, The Great Reset by Dr. Michael Rechtenwald, a libertarian former presidential candidate, outspoken guy, very smart, very good writer. And this was a great book. And got a lot to say about that, but you know, went full Alex Jones basically for that one. Um, so many things to get to, but I do have a couple notes here that I just jotted down that I figured we'll address today. So welcome. It's great to be with you. This is very exciting. Yeah, I was stood up and I was thinking, have I ever been stood up before on a date? And as you know, hopefully, I'm engaged. I'm 6 weeks away from getting married. Super excited. It's the best time of my life. So these are thoughts from my former life. But when have I ever been stood up on a date? I was thinking about it and I go, I don't think so. But I did have, I had a couple bad dates in my day, but one particularly bad date that she just walked out in the middle of dinner. And frankly, I don't blame her. I mean, I wasn't really into it. And she had enough self-respect to say, "You know what? This guy this guy doesn't have a damn care in the world about me. Screw this. I'm walking out." And so I got the waitress's number on the way out. Never ended up meeting with her, but I got the number. That was pretty cool. All right. I tried my best, guys, during my single days, Uh, didn't have much success, but somehow ended up in the best possible situation with my fiance Alexa. So all good. All right. So what to say? Yeah, we're getting married. It's getting very real, and it just keeps getting more and more exciting. Frankly, not getting any cold feet. Just feeling really blessed and lucky. And period. I mean, I got to choose some music. Um, the date is drawing nearer, but it's just all good. So, 35 years old, got my law license a year ago, graduated law school in 2022, had a break between. So, I didn't take the bar exam right away because my dad got very sick. I can talk about that another time. He's doing great now, fine. He had a very serious um, infection related to a throat cancer surgery, and the infection is what almost took him. So I postponed the bar a year, and then when I finally took the bar, I failed it by a hair, just a hair, the California bar, and I didn't really study that hard, frankly, so I didn't feel too bad about it. In fact, I felt really good about how I did, and then I passed it the second time I took it when I prepared adequately. That was last year. So a lot of positive changes. I'm engaged. Alexa and I will be together 2 years on our wedding day. So it's gone quickly, but not too quickly, just right. So everything's coming together. In terms of my job, longtime listeners of mine might know that I was in the field in a construction management role for my entire adult life, and I have not shared yet. So I guess I'm announcing now that I finally moved into the office. I finally got invited in and got a desk there, and it's different. It's exciting. Literally was my first week, and so I was making jokes left and right. Hey, is this The Office or is this Severance? So people are going to get sick of me pretty quickly. So a lot of changes, man. But I'm still doing the podcast, and although I'm pretty comfortable in my support for Trump and my association with the people in the administration, generally, and the base generally. I'm not going to say I'm done searching. That's always a process. I have a lot to learn. I mean, I'm not a know-it-all by any stretch of the imagination. So I'm going to remain curious, interested, try to be engaged, try to get better. That's where this is going. Politics will always be part of that conversation because it was kind of an important thing in my house growing up. It was a means of connecting with my dad, still is, and but not the only means of connection. And it's certainly not my only interest. So hopefully we'll do a little more than politics here. But so that's work and the podcast. Like I said, I've had a couple great guests already, and a few more booked. So this is going in a great direction. I'm very, very happy. Um, I'll tell you real quick. Oh, I meant to say when I was talking about the wedding, I had my bachelor party in Montreal, and it was perfect. It was so perfect. I mean, I think it was 6 of us total. A couple guys couldn't make it, and while that was a bummer, it ended up being so perfect. It was just awesome. We had an Airbnb right on the street called Mount Royal, and it was just kind of a vibrant every kind of shop or store or bakery or ice cream or coffee or restaurant you could possibly want. It was really just a great vibe on this road. You could have not we hardly left that road. We, went to a steakhouse one night in a different part of town, but we basically just hung out, walked around, drank a little bit, played some video games, these are all college friends, had a bunch of laughs, um, played poker, went on a little walk. I mean, it was awesome. Um, what did I want to mention to you about the bachelor party? What did I bring? Oh yeah. So a bunch of us are in a fantasy football league, and there's like 10 guys in this league. And they take it pretty seriously. And if you're familiar with NFL Red Zone, Scott Hansen, the famous announcer, my joke for him always was, and I love him, by the way, love Red Zone. I always said, I wonder if he's wearing pants. He gets so amped up and he's calling the game in the quad box and the witching hour and the greatest hour in football, the greatest hour of the week in history, the witching hour. And it's like, sir, are you wearing pants? No, but he's fantastic. And one of the guys unilaterally decided to just pay him through Cameo to announce our draft order. So we got like this 8-minute video from Scott Hansen. I wish I could play it for you. I could. I just, I know it's boring to play clips. It was hilarious. He took it so seriously. Such a professional job, Scott Hansen. Thank you so much. Just made it really special. And I thought that was really funny. I have another funny thing to say. It's not that funny though. Warning. Because it's our wedding season, we were fortunate enough to receive a gift from somebody, a really fancy espresso machine. And initially, when we got it, now I'm a little more adept at using it, but I was like, this thing is a fucking spaceship. Like, what do you do with it? But if you can imagine me, I'm now like a barista in my apartment. And I guess that's not really funny. It's more, hey, I'm grateful for that. So, love coffee, love espresso. Thank you. You know who you are, who got that for me. By the way, I'm 1,000% sure that that person does not listen to this podcast. Last note here before I go into kind of, I guess, what I would call my agenda items is last night. So Alexa's out of town. She's with her parents, doing some wedding planning and some other stuff. And so Rosie and I, Rosie, my dog, we watched the program. It's a documentary about aliens on Amazon Prime. James Fox, I guess, is a big name in the UFO UAP community, and he did a great job. It was awesome. And before the opening credits, yeah, the opening credits even finished, I was like, "Yep, that's real. They're here." So I'm not going to repeat my Alexa, my fiance, sometimes teases me and says, "Brian, I'm your biggest fan. I listen to every podcast," and she's the sweetest for that. She goes, I don't need to hear your story about why you believe in aliens again. I don't need to hear your story again about what you saw in the sky on March 4th. I said, okay, fine, fair enough. But I always approach this like I have no listeners. So I'm talking to a fresh newborn every day. But Yeah, no, I'm interested in that subject for sure, as many people are. It's so mainstream now, and but by the time the opening credits finish, you're like, yeah, no, that's for sure. They're here. And with respect to what I saw in the sky, do I know for a fact it was an extraterrestrial? No, but it looked like straight out of Halo back in the day. Like, okay, straight out of the video game Halo, straight out of the video game Halo. You can reach out to me if you want me to go into more detail about that. Again, I'll let you know. I'll respond. Okay. So Charlie Kirk, the day he was assassinated, I made a video, and I feel good about that video. Feel like I paid him proper respect, without, you know, doing anything wrong, really. I felt good about that, acknowledging his presence on this. I I don't want to use the word battlefield, but this political battlefield, right? He was a player. He was a general. And I'm sorry to use militarized language. It's wrong, but you know what I'm saying. He was a player. We obviously know that this is a war of ideas. It's an info war, right? As Alex Jones would say, this ain't a killing war, guys. This ain't real battle. This ain't real violence. This is just so horrific what happened. And so I guess with another week under my belt, thinking about it, nothing's really changed fundamentally. Um, yeah, he leaned into controversy, and he was prepared to go into these college campuses and generate controversy. And that's good. It doesn't fundamentally change anything about the analysis. I don't believe he was a bad guy at all. But I do believe he was very well intentioned. So, look, he was provocative. It's probably fair to say that. But so what? That's awesome. I like provocative people. So, I don't believe there's any reason to think that he was racist, or transphobic. Maybe he said something here and there that could lean in that direction. But if you judge him by the overarching totality of his commentary, I don't get that sense at all. So it's terrible. The reaction has been sickening. I mean, I guess that's what's new since I spoke about this is the reaction. Man, it's very, very dark and very sad. Um, and so you kind of can get lost in feeling horrible about humanity and those on the left and this and that. And you really does feel that way. And then I went through a phase where it was like I pitied them. I felt really bad for them. I go, geez, the anger kind of gave way to pity. But it's still infuriating because no person of integrity would be expressing any kind of pleasure or joy out of what happened. It's really fucked up, and I think we're all still mourning Charlie Kirk's death. Just because of he was a nice guy. He was a 31-year-old father. I mean, he was a representation of the highest virtue in our country, which is free speech, open debate. I mean, it's significantly messed up. So we're going to do our best to move on. As a country, we have to, and we're not going to forget him. We are not going to forget him. No, I do think, I do think this will have a lasting impact in some respect. So I stand by that. Somewhat related, this Kimmel story. I guess the situation is certain shows, networks are broadcasting through the public airwaves, right? And cable news like Fox and MSNBC and CNN are not using the public airwaves. They're using private cables and such. And so they're not subject to these rules that people who are broadcasting over the public airwaves are. And so you do have this FCC, what is it, the Federal Communication Commission, right? the government can have some influence on what is being broadcast in the name of public interest. There's a public interest standard, and I'm not an expert on all of this, but that's the situation. And the head of the FCC was on Benny Johnson's podcast, and people are saying he made a mafia-like threat. Ted Cruz denounced it, even, and he said, "You guys know what he said." He said, "People who are broadcasting Jimmy Kimmel, these affiliates, these broadcasters who are taking programming from the networks and the affiliates, the broadcasters, I guess, are the license holders. These license holders, they have a choice to make. They can either pull Jimmy Kimmel or they can face the consequences, essentially. And so they pulled him. And people are saying that's wrong. That's censorship. And people are really coming out. Conan O'Brien, Jay Leno, all of these people. Who else? Every comedian, really. Um, and again, even a guy like Ted Cruz. So are they right? Is this egregious? Well, Trump is saying all they do is hit me all the time, so they don't deserve a license. And it sounds authoritarian, it sounds autocratic, but it also does sound in line with the fairness doctrine, which is no longer applicable, no longer exists as a law, I guess, but still the ghost of it really lingers over our desires for balanced. But the public interest standard is still a thing, and that is still enforceable. And so, is it really autocratic? Is it wrong to say no? If you only always blast the president, then maybe you shouldn't have a license. So, inflammatory language. It's unusual that Trump is willing to weigh in on. This is one of the things that makes Trump different. He's just willing. He understands television. He understands this space. He's been in it for a long time, and he's willing to get in the mud and say screw. And he's the president of the United States. So it's certainly appropriate for your hairs to raise up and go, "Is this okay?" Look, I don't know. I don't think. I'll tell you the truth. My honest reaction is it's not totally inappropriate for the leader of the FCC to maybe it wasn't the most appropriate way for the message to get out. Maybe there's something wrong with that. Maybe there should be a more formal dialogue, private dialogue between the companies. I don't know, but he made the threat, they reacted, and that's that. It seems a little mafia like, but it also seems to comport with how the law is supposed to work. So it's one of those situations where you go, "Do I have a problem with this?" Not really. I mean, I'm not going to weep for Jimmy Kimmel. It's like, okay, I'll keep my eye on it, and if we continue to slide down a strange and unnerving path, then I'll speak up. But at this point in time, I can't say that I have a huge problem with it. Judge me for that. Write me. Tell me I need to wake up. I don't know, or tell me you're fine, Brian. It's all good. But there's no doubt that Trump does, you know, provoke. He is unusual, like I said, and he does cross lines of decency that previously no one has crossed. For example, referring to Ilhan Omar as scum. I get it. She's talking trash about Charlie Kirk in the wake of his death. You have a lot of reasons to disagree with her on policy. You don't like her. I get it. That's fine. He had this long tweet, and it was like, all right, man, this is brutal. This is hard. But it would have been okay if you had just not referred to her as scum in capital letters or at all. But it's like, no, man, this isn't good. And I do want to acknowledge that that's not healthy and that's not setting a good example. Now, I don't think that Trump's language. I think the Democrats have systematically weaponized language, calling him and his supporters fascists and Nazis and all of this. I do think that is more damaging and more of the reason why we are at this heightened political time, you know. But I acknowledge that Trump shouldn't be doing that either. He shouldn't be feeding it at all. He should be rising above. And that is one of his flaws as president. Another note here. This goes back to Charlie Kirk. It's a story from college about a friend I used to have from middle school, high school, and then halfway through college. We had a big falling out. Um, had really had nothing to do with me. It had something to do with how the larger group treated him. I was kind of a collateral damage our relationship, our friendship, which was fine. But we were friends for a long time growing up. He was a conservative guy. I remember I would sit in the back one day. I was in the supermarket parking lot, in the back seat of his dad's truck, and his dad was talking to me about the Bible. And I was atheist agnostic at the time. I was in high school, and he was just saying, and I was just saying, well, it's stories. How do you know that's real? And he goes, well, did you watch the game last night, the Yankees game? I go, no. He goes, who won? I go, the Yankees. He goes, how do you know? I go, I heard it on the news today. He goes, well, you didn't see the games. I was like, okay, like not the strongest argument for me at the time, but RJ was a good guy, and came from a really good family. And so I remember one day, and it was this whole Charlie Kirk situation that uh, made me think of this. So not in the best order here, but forgive me. We were at a house party in college at our friend's house, and RJ was like the one conservative on campus, right? And it was a bumping party, and everything was packed and stuff. And then in the backyard on the patio, a big outdoor deck, RJ was, I don't want to say holding court because everyone was against him, but it was literally like a Charlie Kirk situation where it was RJ against the entire crowd, and everyone was sniping at him, liberal thought, and he was the only one. I like George Bush and this and that. And it just made me think about that. I don't know, you know. Now I identified more with the RJ perspective, with the Charlie Kirk perspective, and if I could go back and if I could teleport right now to that place, I would be standing with RJ and being like, "No, you dumbass, dirty blue hair, septum ring creature." That was just a joke. People are entitled to do whatever they want to their bodies as adults and express themselves however they want. I'm just joking. Um, okay. I mean, I hate to say it, but this is kind of the last item I have here. I have been reading, okay, admission here. I've been listening to, I just started doing audiobooks. I've been listening to Profiles in Courage by John F. Kennedy. And the last couple solo episodes I did, even before I rebranded, I've been reviewing a chapter at a time. And it's great. This book, first of all, JFK, as I've said before, is such an incredible writer. I mean, what an eloquent guy. Uh, so, what a talent. A guy who I'll be exploring and learning about more himself. But I guess this idea is he was coming into the Senate himself. And so he wanted to do a biography of the most independent voices throughout the history of the Senate and their most independent acts of courage where they stood up to their party or to their faction for the greater good of the country. And so he's got all these examples. And the latest one is Daniel Webster. And let me just pull up my notes here because, again, I wasn't really prepared to do this today. Wasn't quite ready. So apparently, so the dictionary, right? The dictionary guy, Daniel Webster. So who is this guy? He's a senator. And apparently he had, in addition to this moral failing where he was, I want to say he was corrupt, but he was just happily openly taking money from banks while he was a senator, and for speaking on their behalf and advocating on their. It's like he had no quarrels about getting paid for his tremendous speaking skills. And apparently his particular gift with rhetoric was, as John F. Kennedy writes in the book, capturing this, or uniquely expressing this sense of oneness that connected everyone in America. So that's really interesting, right? So the dictionary guy knew how to express the sense of oneness in the country. And they paint this picture where a sickly Henry Clay shows up to his door one night and they chat by the fire. And Henry Clay uh, explains to him the five key points of what later becomes known as the Compromise of 1850. This, because it makes you realize, yeah, oh my God, that's right. I mean, it's obviously basic American history, but yeah, this country was really ripped apart by slavery. My God. So that's the other thing about this book is it takes you through that story. So extremely important for anyone who wants to comment on politics. And so you can see how this country was just ripped apart and important decisions were made, and ultimately the preservation of the union, of course, won out. But that was the guiding principle. It's so interesting to consider that not all people thought that that was the highest principle, preservation of the union. And that's why some people say, "Oh, Abraham Lincoln was a tyrant." You know, interesting, food for thought. But and I love the Union victory thing. So I really this stuff resonates with me because I like the idea of this oneness stuff and being one American nation. It's good stuff. But so the compromise of 1850 was California was going to be admitted as a free state. Remember, because there was these tensions between the abolitionists and the secessionists. So California admitted as a free state. New Mexico and Utah organized as territories without legislation either for or against slavery. Texas to be compensated for some territory ceded to New Mexico. Slavery abolished in D.C. And finally, a stricter fugitive slave law for slaves captured in northern states. So Daniel Webster, this was an act of political courage, according to Kennedy, because Webster knew, excuse me, sip of water. Well, whoa, knew well in advance that he'd receive a bunch of criticism from his constituents, his former teammates, these abolitionists. He abandoned his previous opposition of slavery in the territories and his own place, like I said, in the hearts of his countrymen. That's a quote from Kennedy. He knew he was about to ruin his reputation and his last chance of becoming president. Webster definitely dreamed of being president. Uh, so put a asterisk on that. We'll circle back to that. But it was a call for understanding. This speech he gave. So he thinks about it. He accepts Henry Clay's premise that this compromise is the best way to proceed. Because preservation of the union was the most paramount thing. So he says, okay, he thought about it. I'm going to do my Webster thing. I'm going to give a speech appealing to the conscience of the nation to support this plan. And as I've said a few times already, the basic gist of his speech was that the main goal of the Senate is the preservation of the Union, not promoting or abolishing slavery. Think about that. So he appealed for a neutral stance essentially on slavery because the main goal of this body, this Senate, is to preserve the Union. And what he did is he succeeded in sending a signal of assurance to the South of their rights, which prevented the immediate onset of bloodshed. That's pretty much a lifted quote from the book. He succeeded in sending a signal of assurance to the South of their rights, which prevented the immediate onset of the bloodshed. His constituents destroyed him. And interestingly, his position later became popular. He was proven right in the end, but his prospect was so doomed by the speech that he gave that his political life could not be resuscitated. And now I said put an asterisk in this idea that he knew he was um, foregoing his any last opportunity he may have had to be president by giving that speech. Some say by giving that speech and appealing to the South, he was actually making a play for president. So who knows? But what we do know is he died a disappointed man because he never became president. And he was thoroughly exercise from his party. Um, so that's an act of courage, I guess, right? I mean, JFK certainly thinks it is. It was. Yeah. It's an act. Was it? I mean, the abolitionists up in New England and all around there thought it was the most traitorous, cowardly act of all time. In fact, they compared it literally to the actions of Benedict Arnold. So, did Daniel Webster act courageously when he stood up and said, "We shouldn't make abolishing slavery the highest goal of this body"? That's kind of an interesting take. But it just kind of goes to show what we were up against. So, it's absolutely mind-blowing. All right. Well, like I said, I have so many things to talk about, but I wasn't quite ready to launch into them. So I hope this impromptu solo episode suffices. It's absolutely a pleasure to be with you. I don't know. It's a crazy time. It's a crazy time. And I like Trump. I think he's effective. He's shaking things up. He's wild. All of that. Um, I like I said, I admit there are definitely times, and I've said this from day one, really. So it's not like I haven't said this. There are times where I wish he was a little more traditionally presidential. But then again, that's what makes him unique. And so it's like you really can't ask him to be Donald Trump and to be Obama like in terms of his tweets, and it's just not. It's just not who he is. And it's incumbent on us to not mimic the worst parts of his behavior and to just recognize the good for what it is, the bad for what it is, be clear-eyed at all times. These are trying times. These are intense times. There's a lot going on at home and abroad, and the internet, the technology. There's just a million and one reasons to go. Are we going to make it through this? Really? So I don't know. I'm going to do my thing and try to, like I said, just try to get better. Just try to get better. Try to be better. Try to learn. Try to not lose the parts of me that I know are good, respectful, just stay respectful, not get arrogant. It's, I guess, what I'm saying. But it's tough, man. It's not easy. Thank you all for being here. I'll see you next week. Let's see. What do I have coming up? Anything to announce? Well, I do have a couple of interviews booked, but for now, we'll just say we'll see you next week. All right. Take care, guys. Peace out.